I stood in my own driveway watching my sister Claire carry boxes labeled Claire's new home through the front door of the house I had been paying a mortgage on for 3 years. My parents flanked her like bodyguards, acting as if I were invisible. When I tried my key, it wouldn't turn. The locks had been changed. My mortgage payment was due tomorrow, but somehow this house was no longer legally mine. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife ever could. The flight from Seattle had been turbulent, but nothing compared to the storm waiting for me at home. I'd spent a week at a software development conference networking with other engineers and learning about emerging technologies. The rental car's GPS guided me through familiar streets toward the modest 2-story colonial I'd purchased 3 years earlier in Maplewood, New Jersey. Something felt wrong the moment I turned onto Elm Street. Mrs. Patterson, my 70-year-old neighbor, was watering her petunias with unusual intensity, stealing glances toward my house. When she spotted me pulling into the driveway, her face crumpled with what looked like pity. "Ferdinand, honey," she called out, her voice trembling. "I didn't know if you knew about all the moving trucks this week. Your parents and that sister of yours have been coming and going with furniture since Tuesday." My stomach dropped. Moving trucks, I'd only been gone 7 days. I approached my front door fishing for the house key I'd carried for 3 years. The key slid into the lock but wouldn't turn. I tried again, thinking maybe the mechanism was stiff. Nothing. The lock had been completely replaced. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside me, wringing her hands. "They changed those locks on Wednesday, dear. Said something about making the house more secure for your sister. I thought you knew." The world tilted sideways. I called my father immediately, my hand shaking as I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring with his typical gruff tone. "Dad, what's going on? I can't get into my house. Mrs. Patterson says Claire's been moving in Sussy." A long pause. Then, in a voice colder than I'd ever heard from him, "We corrected a mistake, Ferdinand. That house should have always belonged to Claire. She's family-oriented, ready to build something meaningful there. You're too focused on your career to appreciate what a real home means." "What are you talking about? I bought this house. I've been paying the mortgage for 3 years." "Claire deserves that house." My mother's voice chimed in from the background. She'd clearly been listening on speakerphone. "She's engaged to Tommy, planning for children. You're 28 and still single, gallivanting around the country for work conferences. Claire needs stability." My father's voice returned, measured and final. "We had our lawyer prepare the necessary paperwork while you were gone. The house is in Claire's name now. You make good money in that computer job of yours. You can afford to buy something else. You can't just transfer my property to someone else. That's impossible." "Actually, it's quite possible when you have power of attorney documents and the right legal counsel," my father replied smugly. "We've had those papers for years, Ferdinand. You signed them when you bought the house, remember, for emergencies." The memory hit like a physical blow. 3 years ago, when I was navigating the complex home buying process as a first-time purchaser, my parents had insisted I sign various documents for protection. They'd said it was standard procedure, that families needed to be able to help each other in emergencies. I'd trusted them completely. "We thought this would be a family investment." My mother added, her tone becoming saccharine. "Somewhere we could all spend holidays together, where Claire could build her future with Tommy. You travel so much for work anyway. This way the house serves the family's real needs." I ended the call and sat on the front steps of what used to be my home. The mortgage payment was due in 24 hours, $2,100 that would come directly from my checking account, as it had every month for 36 months. Except now, I'd be paying for my sister's free housing while facing the choice between wrecking my credit score or funding their betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Hope you understand, Ferdy. This is what's best for everyone. The house was always meant for a real family." That message crystallized everything. This hadn't been a spontaneous decision or a misguided attempt to help. This was a calculated plan, executed while I was safely out of state, designed to present me with an irreversible situation. They'd stolen 3 years of my mortgage payments, my equity, and my home, then had the audacity to frame it as what was best for the family. I called my bank to report the fraudulent transfer, but they explained they couldn't discuss mortgage details with anyone not listed on current ownership documents. I was no longer considered the homeowner in their system. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I was legally obligated to continue paying for a house I couldn't even enter. As evening fell, I sat in my car outside the house I'd once called home, watching lights turn on in windows I'd looked out of every morning for 3 years. Claire moved around inside like she'd lived there forever, probably already planning where to put Tommy's oversized recliner and big-screen television. My parents had raised Claire and me with constant reminders about family loyalty and sticking together through thick and thin. Yet when it came time to test those values, they'd chosen her comfort over my basic property rights. The message was as clear in their eyes. I was a resource to be exploited, not a son to be respected. Monday morning brought me to the law offices of Walsh & Associates, a mid-sized firm specializing in real estate fraud. Sarah Walsh, a sharp-eyed attorney in her 40s, listened to my story with growing concern. "This type of fraudulent transfer is more common than people realize," she explained, spreading documents across her mahogany desk. "Family members exploit trust to steal property, usually targeting siblings they perceive as successful or absent. The good news is that forgery is a felony. The bad news is proving it will be expensive and time-consuming." Sarah's investigation uncovered layers of deception I hadn't imagined. While examining the county records, she discovered something that made my blood run cold. My parents had taken out a $50,000 home equity loan against the property 6 months earlier. They used the forged power of attorney to secure this loan, Sarah explained, pointing to official documents bearing what appeared to be my signature. The timing suggests they were planning this transfer for quite some time. The money trail led to Claire's engagement party at the prestigious Brookstone Country Club, an extravagant affair that had cost $47,000. My parents had funded my sister's fairy tale celebration, using my home as collateral, never intending to tell me. I decided to confront them at Claire's engagement celebration the following Saturday. The country club's main ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elaborate floral arrangements. 200 guests mingled among tables draped in ivory silk, celebrating Claire's upcoming marriage to Tommy Richardson, her high school sweetheart. My father spotted me immediately, his face darkening as I approached their table near the dance floor. He wore his best navy suit, the one he reserved for special occasions, looking every inch the proud father of the bride-to-be. "You have some nerve showing up here, Ferdinand," he hissed, standing to block my approach to the family table. "This is your sister's special day. Don't you dare cause a scene. Let's talk outside, Dad. We need to discuss the $50,000 you borrowed against my house without permission." His confident expression flickered. That money was always meant for Claire's future. Since the house was always intended to be hers, using its equity for her wedding was perfectly reasonable. My mother rose from her chair, resplendent in a burgundy dress and her grandmother's pearl necklace. "Ferdinand, you're being selfish. This celebration represents Claire's happiness, her future family. You should be supporting her, not looking for ways to ruin her special moment." "Supporting her with my money and my property, you mean?" The conversation attracted attention from nearby tables. My uncle Marcus, my father's younger brother, approached with curiosity. Marcus ran a successful plumbing business and had always been more direct than the rest of the family. "What's this about Ferdinand's money?" Marcus asked, his weathered face creasing with concern. My father's jaw tightened. "Private family business, Marcus. Nothing that concerns you." But I was beyond caring about family diplomacy. "Uncle Marcus, they forged my signature to transfer my house to Claire, then took out a $50,000 loan against it to pay for this party. I'm still paying the mortgage on a house I no longer own." Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to outrage. "Charles, tell me that's not true." "The house was always meant for Claire," my mother interjected quickly. "Ferdinand travels constantly for work. Claire and Tommy need stability for their future children. That doesn't give you the right to steal his property. Marcus replied, his voice rising enough to turn more heads. What you've described is fraud, plain and simple. The family began choosing sides immediately. My Aunt Linda, Marcus's wife, stepped forward with disapproval written across her face. Marcus, you don't understand the full situation. Families should stick together, work these things out privately. Ferdinand is being vindictive. Claire appeared beside us, radiant in her engagement dress, tears streaming down her carefully applied makeup. Why are you doing this to me, Ferdinand? Why are you trying to destroy my happiness? I never wanted to hurt you. I thought you'd understand that I need this house more than you do. The manipulation was expertly executed. Within minutes, I was surrounded by family members either supporting my parents' practical decision or expressing quiet sympathy while refusing to speak up publicly. My cousin Rachel, Marcus's daughter, was the only one who quietly touched my arm and whispered, "This isn't right, Ferdinand. Don't let them bully you." Tommy Richardson stood awkwardly behind Claire, a tall, lanky construction worker who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. When I approached him directly, he avoided eye contact. "Tommy, did you know about the fraudulent transfer when you agreed to move into the house?" "I just want Claire to be happy," he mumbled. "Her parents said they were helping her secure a stable home. I didn't ask a lot of questions. My parents threatened to cut me out of their will entirely and ban me from all family events if I pursued legal action." My father leaned close, his breath smelling of champagne and self-righteousness. "You have a choice, Ferdinand. Drop this vendetta and remain part of this family, or destroy your relationships with everyone who matters for the sake of money and property. Choose wisely." That night, I made my decision. If I couldn't own the house, I wouldn't subsidize my sister's life either. I called my mortgage company and explained that I would no longer be making payments on the property. The customer service representative was confused, but confirmed they'd begin sending default notices to the property address. Since Claire lived there now, she'd be receiving those notices first. Let her discover what it really meant to own a house with a mortgage. 3 weeks after I stopped making mortgage payments, my phone exploded with panicked calls from Claire. The first came at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning, jerking me awake in the modest apartment I'd rented across town. "Ferdinand, the bank sent a letter saying the mortgage is behind. They want $4,800 immediately, or they're starting foreclosure proceedings." "What's going on?" I sat up in bed, processing her words. $4,800 meant she was seeing both mortgage payments for the first time, my original loan of $2,100 monthly, plus the home equity loan payment of $2,700. "Congratulations, Claire. You're discovering what it costs to own a house. Since you're the legal owner now, the bank correctly assumes you're responsible for all debts associated with the property. But I can't afford that much. I make $2,600 a month at the veterinary clinic. That's my entire salary plus overtime." "Then maybe you should have considered the financial implications before stealing my house." Her voice became shrill with desperation. "I didn't steal anything. Mom and Dad said you agreed to this arrangement. They said you wanted me to have the house." "Claire, you know that's not true. You helped plan this whole scheme. I found the text messages on your old phone when I cleaned out my office." Silence. "Then, I don't know what you're talking about." But I'd already discovered the evidence. While retrieving my belongings from the house, I'd found Claire's old smartphone in the kitchen junk drawer. Her messages with our parents from 4 months ago laid out the entire plan, timing the transfer while I was traveling, which lawyer to use, even discussing how to handle my inevitable tantrum. The bank's demands intensified daily. My former mortgage company called me repeatedly, but I directed them to contact the legal property owner. They seemed baffled by the situation, but confirmed they couldn't discuss account details with me anymore. My parents launched a full-scale guilt campaign. My mother called crying about how I was destroying the family and punishing innocent people. My father took a different approach, offering to reinstate me in their will if I'd be reasonable and resume payments. This is still the family home, Ferdinand, he argued during one particularly heated phone call. Your grandchildren will visit there someday. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. I don't have grandchildren, Dad. I'm not even married, and it stopped being the family home when you fraudulently transferred it to Claire. We're prepared to make you the beneficiary of our entire estate if you'll just maintain the house payments. Think about the long-term picture. The offer revealed their desperation, but I'd learned not to trust any promises from them. Put it in writing with legal guarantees and we'll talk. Of course, no such documents ever materialized. Claire's situation deteriorated rapidly. She applied for loan modification but learned she didn't qualify due to insufficient income history. The bank required 2 years of employment records showing adequate earnings, and Claire had only worked full-time for 8 months. Tommy Richardson became another casualty of the financial stress. During a family barbecue at my Uncle Marcus's house, he pulled me aside for a private conversation. Ferdinand, I need you to know something. I've got $18,000 in credit card debt from buying Claire's engagement ring and planning the wedding. I can't help with any house payments, and this whole situation is making me crazy. Tommy looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't been sleeping well. Claire keeps talking about taking out personal loans or asking her friends for money. I never signed up for this kind of financial drama. 2 weeks later, Tommy broke their engagement. Claire found the ring on her kitchen counter with a note explaining he couldn't handle the pressure and felt deceived about her family's situation. The fairy tale romance crumbled under the weight of my parents' scheme. While documenting everything for Sarah Walsh, I discovered my parents had been telling neighbors I was mentally unstable and harassing the family. Mrs. Patterson mentioned that my mother had visited her specifically to explain my breakdown and inappropriate behavior. Your mother seemed genuinely worried about you. Dear, Mrs. Patterson confided. She said you'd been struggling with jealousy about your sister's success and making threats about the house. I told her that didn't sound like the polite young man I've known, but she insisted you needed professional help. The character assassination campaign extended beyond neighbors. I learned from colleagues that my father had contacted my employer, expressing concern about my emotional stability and suggesting they monitor my work performance carefully. Human Resources assured me they'd dismissed his claims as inappropriate family interference, but the damage to my professional reputation was real. Sarah Walsh advised me to document everything recorded phone conversations where my parents admitted to forging documents, text messages showing their conspiracy bank records, proving the unauthorized equity loan, and witness statements from family members who'd heard them discuss their plans. The bank scheduled a foreclosure auction for 60 days out. Claire begged me repeatedly to resume payments, promising to transfer the deed back to me. But Sarah warned this would be legally meaningless, since the original transfer was fraudulent and could expose me to additional liability. Never try to fix fraud with more fraud, Sarah explained. The only clean solution is to let the legal system resolve this properly, even if it means losing the house temporarily. Claire's desperation led her to increasingly irrational proposals. She offered to pay me rent for living in the house despite having no money. She suggested we share ownership, ignoring that the forged documents made any such arrangement legally impossible. She even proposed that I move back in and we split the house payments, apparently not understanding that I'd rather live in a cardboard box than enable their theft. The most painful part wasn't the financial loss or legal complications. It was realizing that my parents had raised me to value family loyalty and moral integrity, while secretly viewing me as a resource to be exploited whenever convenient. They'd taught me to work hard, save money, and build a stable future, then stolen the fruits of that labor to fund their favorite child's lifestyle. As the foreclosure date approached, I found unexpected peace in my decision. If they wanted to play financial games with my property, they could face the consequences when those games went wrong. The foreclosure notice appeared in the local newspaper's legal section, a small paragraph that nonetheless felt like a billboard advertising my family's dysfunction. Within days, the phone calls escalated from desperate to hysterical. Claire took a second job waitressing at Applebee's, working double shifts that left her exhausted and emotionally fragile. Even with both incomes, she was earning maybe $3,800 monthly before taxes still falling short of the mortgage obligations by over $1,000. My mother called daily with updates on Claire's deteriorating condition. "She's lost 12 pounds, Ferdinand. She's working herself to death trying to save that house. She cries herself to sleep every night. How can you watch your sister suffer like this?" "The same way you watched me pay for a house I didn't own for 3 years, Mom, with remarkable ease." During one particularly volatile conversation, my father revealed information that stunned me. While visiting my cousin Rachel for her daughter's birthday party, I learned the truth about my parents' financial situation. Uncle Ferdinand, Rachel's 15-year-old daughter Emily, said innocently, "Grandma and Grandpa sold their car last week. Grandma was crying about it at church. She said they needed money to help Aunt Claire." Rachel pulled me aside, her expression grim. "Ferdinand, there's something you need to know. Your parents have been liquidating everything. Dad saw your father at the pawn shop downtown selling your mother's jewelry. They cashed in their retirement CDs, sold their stock portfolio, even took out a loan against your dad's life insurance policy." The revelation hit like a physical blow. My parents weren't just manipulating me, they were destroying their own financial security to cover for Claire's housing costs and their fraudulent scheme. My father's small accounting firm had been struggling since H&R Block and other chains moved into their area, but they'd hidden their financial crisis from the family. "How bad is it?" I asked Rachel. "Bad enough that they're talking about selling their own house. Your father's business lost 3 major clients last month when word got around about the legal troubles. People don't want their financial affairs handled by someone facing fraud charges." The extended family drama intensified when my uncle Marcus confronted our parents at a family gathering. The argument erupted during what should have been a peaceful Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house. "Charles, you need to come clean about this mess," Marcus declared, his voice carrying across the dining room. "Ferdinand is your son too. You can't destroy his life to prop up Claire's mistakes." My Aunt Linda immediately jumped to my parents' defense. "Marcus, you don't understand. Family means supporting each other even when it's difficult. Ferdinand has the resources to handle this situation. Claire doesn't. Supporting each other doesn't mean committing felonies," Marcus shot back. "What they did was fraud, pure and simple. If Ferdinand were anyone else's son, Charles would be in jail already." The family split into visible factions. My grandmother, 93 years old and sharp as ever, listened to the arguments with increasing dismay. Finally, she spoke in a voice that commanded attention, despite her frail appearance. "In my day, stealing was stealing regardless of who did it or why. Family honor meant doing right by everyone, not just your favorites. Charles, you raised both those children. Ferdinand deserves the same protection you'd give Claire." My father's face reddened with anger and embarrassment. "Mother, you don't understand modern financial arrangements. This was a family investment strategy that got complicated. Don't you dare lie to me, Charles. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. You stole that boy's house, and now you're trying to justify it." The confrontation marked the beginning of my grandmother's gradual withdrawal from family events. She'd lived through the Great Depression, World War II, and decades of family challenges, but watching her children commit fraud against their own offspring broke something fundamental in her worldview. Claire's manipulation attempts became increasingly desperate and concerning. She started leaving voicemails claiming she was having panic attacks and considering permanent solutions to her problems. When I didn't respond immediately, my parents accused me of driving her toward self-harm. However, my cousin Rachel's teenage daughter inadvertently exposed Claire's dramatics as performance. Emily mentioned casually that Claire had been posting cheerful Instagram stories about her new dating life, including photos at expensive restaurants and weekend trips to Atlantic City. "Aunt Claire seemed really happy when I saw her at the mall last week," Emily added. "She was buying new clothes and talking about some guy named Brett who's taking her to concerts and stuff. She said being single again was the best thing that ever happened to her." The contrast between Claire's public persona and her desperate phone calls to me revealed the calculated nature of her emotional manipulation. She was rebounding quite successfully from her broken engagement while simultaneously playing the victim to pressure me into resuming mortgage payments. Local media attention made the situation worse for my parents. The Maplewood Tribune picked up the story when neighbors complained about the deteriorating property conditions. Claire had stopped maintaining the yard and exterior, leading to violations of the neighborhood association standards. The newspaper article titled "Family Feud Leads to Foreclosure" included quotes from neighbors expressing concern about property values and disappointment in the family drama. My father's accounting practice suffered immediately as current clients questioned his integrity and potential clients sought services elsewhere. Their country club membership was suspended pending resolution of the criminal charges. My mother, who'd been active in the club's charitable committees for 15 years, was devastated by the social ostracism from their primary peer group. As the auction date approached, I felt a strange combination of sadness and relief. The house represented 3 years of my life, thousands of hours of work to afford the payments and dreams of building something permanent and meaningful. But it also represented my family's willingness to betray their own children for short-term financial gain. The local real estate investment community buzzed with interest in the upcoming auction. The house was well maintained prior to Claire's occupancy, located in a desirable school district, and likely to sell below market value due to the forced sale circumstances. I planned to attend the auction not to bid, but to witness the final chapter of my parents' fraudulent scheme. Whatever happened next, I wanted to see their faces when they realized their manipulation had consequences they couldn't control or reverse. The foreclosure auction took place on a crisp October morning in front of the county courthouse, drawing a crowd larger than I'd expected. Professional investors clustered near the auctioneer's podium, clutching cashier's checks and speaking in low tones about property values and renovation costs. Curious neighbors stood at the periphery, drawn by the spectacle of financial ruin playing out in public. Claire positioned herself prominently near the courthouse steps, wearing a black dress that made her look like she was attending a funeral. My parents flanked her in matching dark clothing, creating a tableau of grief designed to generate sympathy from onlookers and media representatives. A reporter from the local paper snapped photos of their sorrowful expressions. I arrived with Sarah Walsh maintaining a professional distance from the family drama. We positioned ourselves where I could observe the proceedings without becoming part of Claire's performance. Several neighbors nodded at me with expressions ranging from sympathy to curiosity. As the auctioneer began describing the property details, I noticed an elderly man in an expensive charcoal suit standing apart from the investor group. Something about his posture and profile seemed familiar, but I couldn't place him immediately. He carried himself with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to substantial financial transactions. The bidding opened at $250,000, well below the property's assessed value of $320,000. Several investors jumped in immediately, driving the price upward in $5,000 increments. Claire watched each bid with visible anguish, as if she were watching her dreams being sold piecemeal. At $290,000, most bidders dropped out, leaving only 2 serious contenders, a local property flipping company and the mysterious gentleman in the expensive suit. That's when recognition hit me like lightning. The man was my grandfather Walter, my father's father, whom our family hadn't spoken to in 15 years following a bitter dispute about the family accounting business. Walter had wanted to modernize and expand the firm, while my father preferred maintaining their small-town personal approach. The disagreement had escalated into a complete family estrangement. Walter placed aggressive bids with the calm confidence of someone for whom money was merely a tool rather than a constraint. When the flipping company reached $310,000 and hesitated, Walter immediately countered with $325,000. "Do I hear $330,000? The auctioneer called out. The flipping company representative shook his head and stepped back. No other bidders remained active at that price level. Sold to bidder number 47 for $325,000. Walter approached the auction officials to complete his paperwork while my parents stood in shocked silence. They clearly recognized him too, and the implications of his presence were sinking in rapidly. After handling the immediate legal requirements, Walter approached me directly, ignoring my parents completely. Up close, he looked remarkably well preserved for 78 years old, his silver hair perfectly styled, and his blue eyes sharp with intelligence. "Ferdinand, I believe we should talk privately," he said in a voice that carried the authority of decades in business. "I've been following this situation closely, and I think you deserve to know the full truth." We walked to a quiet corner of the courthouse lawn while my parents watched in stunned disbelief. Sarah Walsh accompanied us, curious about this unexpected development. "I hired a private investigator 3 months ago when I learned about the fraudulent transfer," Walter explained. "I still have contacts in the real estate and legal communities who keep me informed about family matters. What your parents did to you is unconscionable." He opened a leather portfolio and showed me photographs, bank records, and legal documents I'd never seen before. The investigation revealed the extent of their financial manipulation. This wasn't their first fraudulent scheme, Ferdinand. They've been using your success to cover their business losses for over 2 years. The documents showed a pattern of unauthorized use of my credit information, including applications for credit cards in my name that I'd never seen. My parents had been intercepting mail and managing these accounts without my knowledge, using my income and assets as collateral for their failing business. "I built my real estate investment company after leaving the family accounting firm," Walter continued. "I've spent 15 years watching your father's poor business decisions from a distance, but I never imagined he'd resort to stealing from his own children." Walter's proposal was straightforward and generous. He offered to sell me the house at his cost price of $325,000, with owner financing at 3% interest, significantly below current market rates. The arrangement would save me hundreds of thousands in interest over the life of the loan. "There's one condition," Walter said firmly. "You must promise to maintain no contact with your parents or sister until they formally apologize and make complete financial restitution for their fraud. I won't enable their behavior by helping their victim." The condition felt less like a restriction than a liberation. I'd been questioning whether maintaining family relationships built on theft and manipulation served any meaningful purpose. My father approached us tentatively, his face pale with recognition and fear. "Dad, I didn't know you were still in town. We should talk about this situation privately. Work out some kind of family solution." Walter's expression didn't soften an inch. "Charles, you forged legal documents, stole your son's property, and used his assets to fund your business failures. There's nothing to discuss. Ferdinand will deal with honorable family members from now on." "Please, Dad, you don't understand how difficult things have been. The business is struggling, Claire needed help, and Ferdinand has always been able to take care of himself." "I understand perfectly. You chose fraud over honest communication, theft over financial responsibility. You're not the son I raised, and I'm ashamed to share your name." The public rejection devastated my father more than any legal consequences could have. Walter had been his role model and mentor before their estrangement, and losing that relationship permanently was clearly a blow he hadn't anticipated. Claire attempted to approach us, but Walter held up his hand in a gesture that stopped her mid-step. "Young lady, you participated in stealing from your brother and then manipulated him emotionally to cover your crimes. Stay away from both of us." As we prepared to leave the courthouse, Walter introduced me to several relatives I'd never met: his second wife, Margaret, a gracious woman who managed his charitable foundation; my step-aunt Susan, who ran a successful catering business; and 2 step-cousins who worked in Walter's real estate company. "Ferdinand, you have family members who operate with integrity and honor," Walter explained. "You don't need to tolerate theft and manipulation just because you share DNA with the perpetrators." The revelation that I had access to a broader, more ethical family network felt like discovering a hidden treasure. These relatives welcomed me warmly and expressed genuine outrage about my parents' behavior. As we drove away from the courthouse, I realized this foreclosure auction had become something entirely unexpected. Not an ending, but a beginning. Walter's intervention had transformed my greatest personal and financial crisis into an opportunity to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic calls from my parents and Claire, but I let them go to voicemail. For the first time in months, I felt genuine optimism about my future. The criminal investigation moved swiftly once the district attorney's office received Sarah Walsh's comprehensive evidence package. Detective Maria Santos, a seasoned financial crimes investigator, contacted me within a week of the auction to discuss the case. Mr. Ferdinand, what your parents did constitutes multiple felonies: identity theft fraud, elder financial abuse, and forgery, Detective Santos explained during our meeting at the prosecutor's office. The paper trail is extensive and clear. We rarely see cases with this much documentation. The charges carried serious potential consequences. Identity theft and fraud each held maximum sentences of 5 years in state prison, while the financial abuse charges added additional penalties. My parents faced the possibility of substantial prison time and permanent criminal records that would destroy any remaining professional credibility. Claire's legal troubles multiplied when the Internal Revenue Service discovered she owed $18,000 in back property taxes from the period when she held the deed. As the legal owner during those months, she was responsible for all tax obligations, penalties, and interest that had accumulated. The IRS doesn't care about family drama or fraudulent transfers, Sarah explained. As far as they're concerned, Claire owned the property and is liable for all associated tax debts. They've placed liens on her wages from both jobs. The wage garnishment meant Claire would lose 25% of her income, indefinitely making it impossible for her to afford decent housing or rebuild her financial stability. She moved back in with our parents, creating additional stress on their already strained marriage. My mother's breakdown intensified when the criminal charges became public knowledge. She was hospitalized for 3 days with what doctors diagnosed as acute stress reaction, requiring sedatives and psychological evaluation. The family's dirty laundry was now spread across local legal documents and newspaper articles. My father's accounting firm, already struggling, lost its remaining major clients when the criminal charges appeared in public records. Local business owners couldn't risk associating with someone under investigation for financial fraud. The firm that had supported our family for 25 years ceased operations entirely. Their country club expelled them permanently after an emergency board meeting. My mother, who had served on multiple charitable committees and considered the club central to her social identity, was devastated by the social ostracism. Friends and neighbors began avoiding them at church and community events. Meanwhile, Walter's mentorship transformed my professional trajectory in ways I hadn't imagined possible. He invited me to shadow his real estate investment operations, teaching me strategies for evaluating properties, negotiating deals, and managing rental portfolios. Real estate investment isn't just about buying and selling, Walter explained during one of our weekly dinner meetings. It's about understanding market trends, identifying undervalued assets, and creating systems for long-term wealth building. His company, Northfield Real Estate Holdings, managed over 200 properties across 3 states. Walter had built the business methodically over 15 years, focusing on mid-market residential properties in stable neighborhoods with good school systems. "I want to offer you a position as an acquisitions analyst," Walter said during our 3rd week of working together. "You have the analytical skills from your software background and the personal integrity I require in my business partners. The salary would be $20,000 more than your current position with profit-sharing opportunities." The job offer represented more than just financial advancement. Walter was offering me entry into a business world built on ethical principles and long-term relationships, the opposite of my parents' short-term manipulation and fraud. My extended family relationships shifted dramatically as relatives learned the full truth about the situation. Uncle Marcus became one of my strongest supporters publicly, defending my decision to pursue criminal charges despite family pressure to keep things private. "What Charles and Helen did was criminal," Marcus declared during a tense family gathering. "If Ferdinand had stolen from them, they'd have called the police immediately. This double standard is exactly why the fraud happened in the first place. Aunt Linda maintained her position that family members should resolve disputes privately, but her own children disagreed with her stance. Rachel and her siblings began expressing support for my position, creating generational divisions within the extended family. My grandmother, despite her advanced age, provided the most powerful moral clarity about the situation. During what would be her final family dinner, she addressed the entire gathering with remarkable directness. "I've lived 93 years and seen this family through wars, depressions, and countless challenges," she said, her voice still strong despite her frail appearance. "But I've never seen family members steal from each other and call it love." Charles and Helen committed crimes against Ferdinand. Protecting them from consequences isn't kindness, it's enabling evil. Her words carried special weight because she'd witnessed the family's history through multiple generations. When the matriarch of the family declared my parents' actions evil, it provided moral permission for other relatives to speak their true feelings. Claire's relationship with her parents deteriorated under the pressure of their shared financial crisis. She blamed them for ruining her engagement and creating the tax debt that now controlled her financial future. They blamed her for being ungrateful and failing to appreciate their sacrifice. "I never asked them to steal your house," Claire told me during one of her increasingly frequent attempts to contact me. "I thought you had agreed to let me live there. They told me you wanted me to have it." Her claims of innocence rang hollow given the text messages Sarah Walsh had recovered. But I recognized that Claire had been manipulated by our parents, just as I had been, albeit as a beneficiary rather than a victim. The stress destroyed my parents' 28-year marriage. My father blamed my mother for encouraging the scheme, while she blamed him for poor business management that created their financial crisis. They separated temporarily while awaiting trial, with my father moving into a studio apartment above his shuttered accounting office. As winter approached, the legal proceedings moved toward resolution. The prosecutor offered my parents a plea agreement, full financial restitution to me, including all mortgage payments, legal fees, and damages, 200 hours of community service with financial literacy organizations, permanent probation with mandatory financial counseling, and formal written apologies acknowledging their crimes. The alternative was a trial that could result in significant prison time and permanent felony convictions that would destroy any hope of rebuilding their lives. Their criminal defense attorney strongly recommended accepting the plea agreement. Walter's support throughout this period was invaluable, but it extended beyond just business mentorship. He helped me understand that the pain of family betrayal, while intense, didn't have to define my future relationships or worldview. "Ferdinand, some people are born into families that support and nurture them," Walter said during one of our conversations. "Others have to build their own families from people who share their values. Blood relationships don't automatically deserve respect if they're built on manipulation and theft." His perspective helped me realize that cutting contact with my parents and Claire wasn't punishment. It was self-preservation and an investment in building healthier relationships with people who operated from integrity rather than exploitation. Spring brought resolution to the criminal case and transformation to my life that I could never have imagined during those dark days following the auction. My parents accepted the prosecutor's plea agreement, acknowledging their fraud in official court documents and agreeing to comprehensive restitution. The financial settlement totaled $87,000, all mortgage payments I'd made since the fraudulent transfer, legal fees, property damage Claire had caused during her occupancy, and compensation for emotional distress. My parents sold their house to meet the restitution requirements, moving into a modest 2-bedroom apartment near the community college, where they would complete their mandatory financial literacy courses. My father's transformation was the most dramatic. Losing his business professional reputation and social standing forced him to confront the consequences of his choices in ways he'd avoided for decades. During the court proceedings, he addressed me directly for the first time since the crisis began. "Ferdinand, I convinced myself that stealing from you was justified because you were successful and Claire was struggling," he said, his voice heavy with shame. "I told myself it was temporary, that we'd find a way to make it right eventually. But the truth is, I was failing as a businessman and a father, and I chose the easy wrong instead of the difficult right." My mother's apology took longer to materialize, but when it came, it revealed depths of self-awareness that surprised me. During a family therapy session mandated by their probation agreement, she addressed the favoritism that had poisoned our family dynamics for decades. I always worried more about Claire because she seemed more vulnerable. My mother explained, tears streaming down her face. You were smart, capable, independent. I thought you could handle anything. But treating you like you didn't need love and support was wrong. I failed you as a mother long before we stole your house. Claire's transformation was perhaps the most meaningful for our long-term relationship. Facing the reality of her tax debt, the collapse of her engagement, and the social consequences of participating in fraud forced her to develop genuine responsibility for the first time in her adult life. She enrolled in business administration classes at the community college using student loans to supplement her reduced income. The veterinary clinic where she worked promoted her to a supervisory position when her coworkers saw her dedication and growth. Most importantly, she began acknowledging her role in the scheme rather than presenting herself as an innocent victim. Ferdinand. I knew what Mom and Dad were doing wasn't right, Claire admitted during one of our carefully structured meetings. I was so focused on getting what I wanted that I didn't care how it affected you. I told myself you'd be fine because you always landed on your feet, but that was just an excuse for selfishness. Walter's mentorship continued flourishing as I transitioned into my new role with Northfield Real Estate Holdings. The company's approach to business aligned perfectly with my values: long-term thinking, ethical dealing, and building relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Within 6 months, I was managing acquisition projects, independently identifying undervalued properties, and negotiating purchase agreements. Walter's confidence in my abilities grew as I demonstrated analytical skills and integrity in increasingly complex transactions. Ferdinand, I want you to understand something important, Walter said during one of our quarterly business reviews. When I intervened at the auction, I wasn't just helping you recover from your parents' theft. I was investing in the future of this company. You represent the kind of principled leadership that will carry this business forward. Walter revealed his long-term plans for succession, explaining that he'd been searching for someone with both business acumen and strong character to eventually take over operations. My technical background in software engineering provided unique insights into property management systems and market analysis that distinguished me from traditional real estate professionals. The house itself became a symbol of transformation rather than loss. Walter and I renovated the property together, updating the kitchen, refinishing the hardwood floors, and modernizing the electrical and plumbing systems. The work was therapeutic, allowing me to reclaim the space emotionally while building something beautiful and functional. My extended family relationships deepened in ways that revealed how much my parents' manipulation had isolated me from potential sources of support. Uncle Marcus and I developed a genuine friendship based on shared values and mutual respect. His children, my cousins, became close allies who provided perspective on healthy family dynamics. My grandmother lived to see the resolution of the legal case, expressing satisfaction that justice had been served and family honor restored. When she passed away peacefully the following winter, her will revealed that she'd left me her house and a substantial portion of her savings, recognizing me as the family member who'd maintained integrity under extreme pressure. The broader family dynamics shifted permanently as relatives chose sides based on their values rather than traditional loyalties. Those who prioritized fairness and accountability gravitated toward supporting me, while those who valued family unity above all else maintained relationships with my parents despite their crimes. Rachel, my cousin, who had supported me consistently, became one of my closest friends and advisors. Her perspective as someone who'd witnessed the family dysfunction from outside its immediate impact helped me understand patterns I'd been too close to recognize. Ferdinand, your parents spent years conditioning you to accept inappropriate treatment by calling it family loyalty, Rachel explained during one of our conversations. Breaking free from that pattern took incredible strength. You've given the whole family permission to expect better from each other. Claire and I rebuilt our relationship gradually with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. We met monthly for coffee, discussing her progress in school and work, while avoiding rehashing past grievances. She demonstrated genuine growth by taking responsibility for her actions and working to rebuild her life without expecting financial or emotional rescue. My relationship with my parents remained limited but cordial. We attended major family events together and maintained polite contact, but I never again trusted them with access to my financial information or major life decisions. They seemed to understand that their betrayal had permanently altered our relationship dynamic. The career transition to real estate investment proved more rewarding than I'd anticipated. Working with Walter provided daily lessons in business strategy, market analysis, and ethical leadership. The profit-sharing arrangement meant my income grew substantially as the company expanded into new markets. 2 years after the auction, I hosted a small celebration in the renovated house, surrounded by the family members and friends who had supported me through the crisis. Walter raised a toast that captured the transformation perfectly. To Ferdinand, who faced betrayal with grace, injustice with courage, and loss with wisdom. You've shown that integrity isn't just a nice idea. It's the foundation for building a life worth living. As I looked around at the faces of people who had chosen to support what was right rather than what was comfortable, I realized that my parents' betrayal had led to something unexpected. The discovery of my real family, the people who would stand with me based on character rather than obligation. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was profound and lasting. When people show you who they really are through their actions, believe them the first time. My parents had shown me that they viewed me as a resource rather than a son, and accepting that truth, however painful, freed me to build relationships with people who saw me as a person deserving of respect and consideration. The house that had once represented loss and betrayal became a symbol of resilience and new beginnings. Every room held memories of reconstruction rather than destruction. Evidence that sometimes the best response to theft is not revenge, but the patient work of building something better from the ruins. Standing in my renovated kitchen 3 years later preparing dinner for Walter and Margaret, I felt profound gratitude for the painful journey that had led me here. My parents' betrayal had forced me to discover strengths I didn't know I possessed and relationships I might never have developed if I'd remained trapped in their dysfunction. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are, allowing you to choose your own path forward with clarity and confidence instead of obligation and false hope. What would you do if your family betrayed your trust in such a fundamental way? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about overcoming family betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps you navigate your own challenging relationships with wisdom and strength.